Welcome to Let's Talk Criterion, where we preview forthcoming releases on Blu-ray and 4K in the Criterion collection, both here in the UK and the US. Now, there was considerable excitement when Criterion announced that they were releasing the pre-code Sideshow shockers directed by Todd Browning from the 1920s and the early 1930s, namely Freaks, The Unknown and The Mystic. Todd Browning was an American film director and film actor, and he was a screenwriter, vaudeville performer, and carnival sideshow and circus entertainer. He directed a number of films of various genres between the years of 1915 and 1939, but was primarily known for horror, and was often cited in the trade press as the Edgar Allan Poe of cinema. Now, as a child, Browning was fascinated by circus and carnival life. And at the age of 16, and before he even finished high school, he ran away from his well-to-do family to join a travelling circus. Now, initially hired as a roustabout in the circus, he very soon began serving as a spieler. Now, that's a barker at sideshows. And by 1901, at the age of just 21, he was performing song and dance routines for Ohio and Mississippi riverboat entertainment, as well as acting as a contortionist for the Manhattan Fair and Carnival Company. Now, Browning developed a burial act that was live, in which he was billed as a living hypnotic corpse, and he performed as well as a clown with the renowned Ringling Brothers Circus. Now, he would later draw on these very early experiences to inform his cinematic choices and inventions. He starred in his very first film in 1909 at just the age of 29. Now, this was a comedy role, and he was cast in over 50 two-reeler features. Film historian Vivian Sobchak reports that a number of one- or two-reeler features are attributed to Browning from the years 1914 to 1916. And indeed, the biographer Michael Barson also credits Browning's directorial debut to being that of the one-reeler drama called The Lucky Transfer, and that was released in March of 1915. Now, when Browning transitioned properly to directing, his career took a different turn altogether. A distinct pattern had appeared in his post-accident body of work, distinguishing it from the comedy that has been his speciality up to 1915. Now, his focus was very much on moralistic melodrama, with recurrent themes of crime, culpability and retribution. And indeed, the 31 films that Browning wrote and directed between 1920 and 1939 were, with very few exceptions, melodramas. So that brings us to Freaks. Now, this film was made rather late in Browning's career, and it was released in 1932. It was originally intended to be a vehicle for Lon Chaney, and it's set amongst the backdrop of a travelling French circus, and it follows a conniving trapeze artist who joins a group of carnival sideshow performers with a plan to seduce and murder a dwarf in the troupe to gain his inheritance. However, her plot proves to have dangerous consequences. Now, the film stars Wallace Ford as Froso, Lila Hyams as Venus, Olga Blakhnova as Cleopatra, Roscoe Attis as Roscoe, Henry Victor as Hercules, Daisy and Violet Hilton as the Siamese twins, and incidentally they're real Siamese twins, Schlitzie as himself and Samuel Whiskers, Josephine Joseph as the half-woman, half-man, Johnny Eck as the half-boy, Frances O'Connor as the armless girl, Peter Robinson as the human skeleton, and Olga Roderick as the bearded lady. Now, I would advise you put on subtitles for the scenes featuring Schlitzie, because his dialogue is really hard to decipher. Filmed in Los Angeles in the fall of 1931, some employees at MGM Studios were discomforted by the presence of the actors that were portraying the freaks on set, and other than the so-called more normal-looking freaks, the Siamese twins and the Earls, for instance, the actual performers in the film were not allowed to be on the studio lot at all. They were relegated instead to a specially built tent. Now, in January of 1932, MGM held test screenings of the film, which proved utterly disastrous. Halfway through the preview, a lot of people got up and walked out. They just didn't like the film. They felt uncomfortable. Others reportedly became ill or fainted, and one woman who attended the screening threatened to sue MGM, claiming the film had caused her to suffer a miscarriage. In response to this, the MGM executive Irving Thalberg, at the time, without consent of the director Todd Browning, edited the original 19-minute feature, which was significantly cut, with additional alternate footage incorporated into it to help increase the running time. Now, the final abridged cut of the film, which was released in February of 1932, was only 64 minutes. The original version no longer exists. In the UK, the film was banned by British censors and remained so for more than 30 years, and eventually it was passed with an X in August 1963. The second film in the set, The Unknown, is one of Todd Browning's earlier features. From 1927, it's an American silent horror film and stars Lon Chaney as carnival knife thrower Alonzo the Armless, and Joan Crawford as his beloved carnival girl, Nanon. Originally titled Alonzo the Armless, filming for this took place from February 7th to March 18th in 1927. Browning's genesis for the story emerged from his reflection upon an individual who suffers a multiple amputation of limbs and its dramatic personal repercussions. Browning describes the process beginning with the spectacle of traumatic disfigurement rather than plot. Alonzo the Armless is a circus freak who uses his feet to toss knives and fire a rifle at his partner Nanon. However, he is actually an imposter and a fugitive running from the law. He actually has arms, but he keeps them tightly strapped to his torso, a secret only known to his midget friend Kojo. Alonzo's left hand is bifid, that means he's got a double thumb, and he would readily identify him, of course, as the perpetrator of various crimes from his past. Based on a story by director Todd Browning and a scenario written by Waldemar Young, this tale of sexual obsession involving physical and emotional disfigurement unfolds in a circus setting, a setting that comports with Browning's penchant for the lower forms of spectacle and theatrical performance. The content of these films is really why they've had this reputation, and the fact they were pre-code has led to a morbid attraction. For some reason, audiences have both been excited and repulsed at the same time, fascinated by these films featuring freaks or persons with abnormalities. The last film in the set is a rare one indeed, and it's The Mystic from 1925. This is an American MGM silent drama directed by Todd Browning, and again co-written by Browning and Waldemar Young, writing a similar storyline to their earlier 1925 hit The Unholy Three. Browning was unable to, however, hire his favourite star for this, Lon Chaney, and The Mystic wound up a little-known film with a cast of now largely forgotten names. They consist of Aileen Pringle as Zara, Conway Turrell as Michael Nash, Mitchell Lewis as Zazarak, Robert Ober as Anton, Stanton Heck as Carlo, David Torrance as Bradshaw, Gladys Hulett as Doris Merrick, and DeWitt Jennings as the police inspector. Now, this film has only been available on VHS and DVD so far, so inclusion of this on this Criterion Blu-ray release is very welcome. Returning to one of his favourite themes, Crook's bilking the gullible nouveau riche, Todd Browning, with Waldemar Young's help, directed this evocative silent melodrama starring Conway Turrell as Michael Nash, an American criminal who imports a gang of Hungarian gypsies to gain control over a fortune. Now, the victim is Doris Merrick, played by Gladys Hulett, and she's persuaded by the fake medium Zara, played by Aileen Pringle, to hand over her jewels to Nash. But the seance does more than raise the fake spirit of Doris's dear departed father. It also uncovers a plot by Uncle James, that's David Torrance, to take over the girl's inheritance. Saving Doris from her unscrupulous guardian Nash and Zara, they renounce crime and return to Hungary. Somewhat of disappointment in comparison with Browning's later thriller, The Unholy Three. The Mystic benefited from the presence of costume designer Roma de Turtov, aka Urte, whose extravagant black and white creations were luxuriously modelled by the very sophisticated Aileen Pringle. Now, it's a fantastically atmospheric film and rarely seen missing link in the development of Tod Browning's artistry, set amidst his favoured milieu of shadowy sideshows and clever criminals. The Mystic also provides a striking showcase for the silent era diva Aileen Pringle, who sports a series of memorably outre looks in her costumes designed by Urte. She's a phony psychic in a Hungarian carnival who, under the guidance of a Svengali-like con man, crashes and proceeds to swindle high society. So there it is, Freaks. It's a great addition to the collection with 3 of Tod Browning's many film offerings over the years, and it comes new to the Criterion collection with the following special features. A new 2K digital restoration of Freaks with uncompressed mono soundtrack on the Blu-ray. New 2K digital reconstruction and restoration of The Unknown by George Eastman Museum with a new score by the composer Philip Carley. New 2K digital restoration of The Mystic with a new score by composer Dean Hurley. Audio commentaries on Freaks and The Unknown and an introduction to The Mystic by film scholar David J. Scal. New interview with author Megan Abbott about director Tod Browning and pre-code films, and archival documentary on Freaks. An episode from 2019 of critic Christian Lopez's podcast Ticklish Business about disability representation in Freaks. A reading by Scal of Spurs, that's the short story on which Freaks is based. A prologue to Freaks, which was added to the film in 1947. A programme on the alternate endings to Freaks. A video gallery of portraits from Freaks. And an essay by the film critic, a regular contributor to Criterion, Farron Smith Name. New cover art is by Raphael Garoni. Well, I have to admit, even now, watching these features, it does invoke a certain reaction, which I think is only human when witnessing something away from the norm. We're a lot more tolerant nowadays, of course, but the spectacle still provokes a certain something which may be more conditioned in us than we'd be prepared to openly admit. Freaks is released in the US on Tuesday, October the 17th, and it's coming out in the UK on Monday, October 23rd, as a Blu-ray set, and is combined as Spine 1194. In the next edition, we look at 3 recently released films labelled as the Janus Contemporaries, and that's EO, No Bears and The Innocent. Until then, from me, as always, it's goodbye, and above all, good viewing.